Good morning, everyone. We are here this morning at the Missouri Botanical Garden. I'm Kristina. This is Cassidy. And we are here this morning starting off in the Gladney Rose Garden. It's been a couple weeks now since we've just taken you on a walk around the garden to show you updates on everything that's in bloom now. And the rose garden is looking especially beautiful, so we thought we would start off here. So let me turn this camera around and we will show you some of these flowers. So we just talked to Matthew, who is the horticulturist who takes care of the roses, and he was telling us this one right here is one of his favorites that's in bloom right now. It has a really fragrant smell. It's really tall and that beautiful creamy white color. And did you see what the name of the variety was again, Cassidy?
Well, he said it was, he called it Francis.
Francis. But we were also talking to Matthew about the fact that with the roses, they sort of experience a second peak, a second blooming time around this time of year in September, when the weather cools off a little bit. And the heat of St. Louis summers isn't really what they prefer. So if you think of like the rose garden in Portland, for example, the weather there is cooler, not so hot and stressful for the flowers, and that's where they're kind of known to thrive. And here in September, our weather is a little more like that. So he was telling us that from about now till mid-October is a really great time to come and see these roses. And this morning, Matthew's working on pruning. So he was telling us that with roses, they bloom with new growth. So if you have roses right now and you're thinking, oh, it's fall time, you know, plants are kind of on their way out. Actually, it's a great time to keep tending for those and go ahead and prune. He said somewhere 8 to 12 inches off, and that will cause new growth that allows the roses to take advantage of this weather that's really good for them, so that you can get a whole nother round of blooms. And then here, you may have heard a little bit about this. We shared about this on our Facebook page recently. But we have right now featured this yellow rose called Easy Elegance, because during the suffrage movement, supporters of women's right to vote would wear a yellow rose to show their support. So the League of Women Voters was here a few weeks ago on the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment's ratification, and together with them and Matthew, we dedicated this rose in honor of that movement. It's a really nice yellow. So come check that out and all of these blooms while it's looking really good.
I know we're talking mostly about the flowers, but one of the other things that you can see that's kind of neat are the fruits. So that's a fruit from this shrub rose here. And if you can see this, this is actually the part of the flower that stays attached to the fruit. And if this looks like another fruit, there's some similarities. To me, it looks a lot like an apple. And apples and roses are actually in the same botanical family. So apples, roses, cherries, peaches, plums. They don't necessarily all have all the fruits that look like that, but that's one feature where they kind of hold on to the flower and grow the fruit off the back side of it. So you'll see some of these rose bushes that have already gone to fruit. You'll see that that on there.
And those are known as rose hips, right? That's what I've heard before.
No one's ever accused me of being a rosarian, so. In a lot of ways, it reminds me right now of sort of end of May, early June when we did a walk through here.
Yeah.
Just seeing all the different colors and all the roses.
Wow, look at all those blooms. These Victorias this morning are putting out a lot of blooms.
Yeah, I counted 7 this morning, and we have 3 different types of Victorias in the pool. 2 species and a hybrid between the 2, and I think every one of them has a bloom on it this morning, which is great. Very cool to see. And that's something that, because a lot of these are white blooms, so the first night it blooms white and the second night it blooms pink. So if you were to come, say, tomorrow morning when we're open first thing, you would hopefully see a whole bunch of giant pink flowers in this pool. And, we were talking about the cooler weather being good for roses. It's not so great for tropical water lilies.
Mm-hmm.
So the Victorias here in the central circular pool and all of our tropical water lilies on either side, those have about 3 weeks left in the pools before those will get taken out and composted. And we've talked about that on the tour with Derek before. All the water lilies that are out here, this is their one season, and then they get composted at the end of the year. And Derek has a whole greenhouse full of baby water lilies that he'll start growing for next season. And if you can hear all the activity around us, there's quite a bit of noise. We're actually busy hanging Christmas lights to get ready for Garden Glow. There's only about 3 months left until Christmas, so and just because of the coronavirus and social distancing and a lot of those kind of restrictions, we started even earlier than usual to get things in good shape. And if you can see ahead of us, they're actually trimming the hedges. So that's Travis Hall and he oversees the bulb garden and is on our tree crew, and he's up there in the lift trimming those hedges to give them a nice crisp edge, and then that's something that we'll hang Christmas lights on a little bit later. And that's part of this whole, if you've ever been here for Garden Glow, this area in particular is filled with lights, so this is part of getting it all ready for that display.
And if you do come, you can actually see some snowflake lights kind of hiding, tucked away up in the trees along the entry drive-in.
Yeah, we started about 4 months ahead of Christmas Day is when they started hanging lights.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good, how are you? And we keep mentioning the approach of fall and the cooler weather. I did just want to mention for people who are watching from elsewhere that it is, oh yeah, the weather today in St. Louis is in the mid-60s, and it was even cooler this morning as the sun was still coming up. It's not always the case here in September, so we're grateful for a little break from the heat. And you're here in the rock garden now. Cassidy was pointing out there's a lot of butterflies enjoying these blooms.
Yeah, they seem specifically fond of the blazing star, which are these purple tufts. And there's at least a half dozen monarchs butterflies just coming around here. I suppose they're having breakfast. And in addition to the blazing star, which is the purple, there's also this really pretty blue sage, Salvia azarea. And so that's another really pretty fall bloom. I have some in my yard as well. And I'm going to borrow from our lesson when we were on our tour at Shaw Nature Reserve a few weeks ago. Square stem, opposite leaves, bunched flowers. So this is in the mint family. But yeah, this is a blue sage. So between that, the blue sage, which is popular with the bees, and then the liatris, the blazing star, that's popular with the butterflies. This area is full of activity right now.
And right here we have some crocus coming up. So crocus comes up at the very, very end of winter in like February or so, and also at the very, very end of summer. So this is autumn crocus, and it's this really interesting flower that kind of signals the changing of the seasons. So the fact that we're seeing that right now really points to the cooler weather we've been seeing here already this year and the passing of summer. Here's another bigger patch of it right here, actually. It's this really nice purple color, but it can be white as well.
We're going to move away from the noise. As we mentioned, that is part of our preparations, getting ready for Garden Glow, our holiday lights.
And whenever we're here on Mondays, we see a lot of that kind of work going on right now.
Yeah, one of the reasons that we're still closed on Mondays, which isn't usual for us, is to give staff time to do work like that. And we're usually dodging sprinklers on Mondays too.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to when we're open Tuesday through Sunday.
Still a lot of that summer color around. It definitely doesn't look like fall quite yet, but there are signs. Speaking of signs of fall, actually, I see some Osage oranges.
I didn't bring a hard hat with me.
So if you've ever seen these fruits, they're pretty hard to miss. You can see they're pretty big, kind of look like a brain, and they're pretty sticky too. These are Osage oranges. And they're called that actually not so much because of the fruit, but because the bark of the tree that they come from has this really orange undertone to it. You can see that there.
Yeah, and these trees in particular, the one that we're looking at here, and there's actually a line of them, are more than 100 years old. They were actually planted to line the original driveway from Old Manchester, or what is now Vandevenner, to line the drive down to Tower Grove House, which was Henry Shaw's country home. And so if you stand here, you can kind of see from one tree to the next to the next.
Yeah.
You can get a sense of where that driveway used to be, and the only remnants of it now are these trees. The driveway is gone. The children's garden is taken over in that place. But just a neat little piece of history, and a way that plants can be part of that history as well. So these trees have been here, boy, almost 150 years, more than 100 for sure.
And they're really quite thick too.
Yeah. And they have, I don't know if we can see it. So yeah, we can kind of see it here. They are covered in thorns.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so people would plant these really close together, and they would work to keep not only people but mostly animals. So they'd plant them as fence rows because animals wouldn't want to walk through a whole row of these really young trees close together and short to the ground and get stuck by these thorns. And you have male and female trees, so female trees will have the fruit. So this one here is a female tree, and then the one next to it with no fruit on it is a male tree.
And they're great.
Yeah.
They're like exactly the size and close to the weight of a softball. And sometimes you'll see people in the park playing with them on the baseball field.
We do use them. In my house, we put them in jack-o'-lanterns to give the jack-o'-lanterns some brain.
That's good.
Yeah, this is the time of year we talk about fall, and so the Osage orange, not a particularly edible fruit. I've heard people say they
Yes,
can.
someone just asked that question actually.
People do all sorts of things on YouTube. I've seen videos where people say it's edible if you give it a certain preparation. I'm pretty adventurous with my fruit trying, but I haven't attempted that yet. But one thing that is, and we're coming up on a little grove of them right now, are these black walnuts. And so this is the time of year that lots of native trees are putting out their fruit. And the black walnut is a big one. That's actually a huge crop in Missouri. People go out and forage for these and collect them.
Oh no, these leaves are starting to change.
Yeah,
a little bit.
We can see any that are low enough that we can pick some. But they can get to be the size of a small apple. And there's one on the ground here. So they have this green skin, and then inside of that is the nut, and there's this I guess sort of flesh in between that is what can stain your hands brown if you handle it too much. But it's also used historically for dye making, so to make sort of a brown dye. I tried to do some of that last year. My neighbor has a black walnut tree, and I gathered up a big bucket to make brown dye, and then by the next day the squirrels had taken them all.
Oh.
So if you don't find too many black walnuts on the ground, you'll definitely find the husks after the squirrels have had their fill. And I don't see any here.
Not yet anyway.
Yeah, and this is another one. I mean, these are not small, lightweight fruits, so definitely a watch out below kind of tree.
Yes.
This time of year. And here we're walking past the Kemper Center for Home Gardening. A couple weeks ago we did a tour through here with Daria McKelvey, who's the supervisor of the indoor part of the Kemper Center for Home Gardening, and she gave us a nice walking tour of the area out here and kind of a showcase because there's a lot, and we didn't even get to about half of it. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
big these display gardens are. And so if you missed that, if you go to the garden's YouTube page, we have all of our tours online, and you can watch that. And here's something else we can mention while we're walking past it. So these bright red berries. This is actually a type of holly. It's called winterberry, and nice little red berries like you'd be familiar with on holly. And you can kind of see the leaves have that toothed margin, although not as extreme as the holly that we're more familiar with. So this is actually a deciduous holly. So most of the trees are evergreen, but this one actually loses its leaves every year. And we can actually, for comparison, because there's another holly right up here, show you the difference in the leaves. So you can see the similarities and the differences. That's the Missouri native American holly. This is also a Missouri native but deciduous type of holly. And then the one that everybody kind of associates with Christmas and wintertime is actually a European holly, but it's very similar to its American cousin. So just kind of a neat thing. And from the deciduous one, the winterberry, lots of interest right now with all those bright red berries on it. And the American hollies, the bigger tree ones, will be having their berries come into color here in the next few months. Right now you can see they're still pretty green,
yeah,
unripe.
But they're there.
Yep. Lots of hibiscus still in bloom.
Mm-hmm. And why don't we go through the box garden? This area has been closed a little bit more recently, though we reopened it. So now Thursdays through Sundays, if you come to the garden, this area will be open. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, on the other hand, we do still keep it closed so that our horticulturists can work and still be able to stay safely distant from each other and from our visitors too. But on Thursdays through Sundays, if you come through here, you can take a walk through the Boxwood garden.
And that's true of some of the other areas as well, the climatron. And so if you're looking for the best time to visit, Thursday through Sunday is really when you'll get the highest number of our outdoor spaces open.
And these fountains are fun. If you've been here before, you probably recognize these, but they sort of leap from one to the next over the path here. And all these hostas flowering still too.
I think this might be a windflower. Anemone. So a couple of things in bloom right here by the gazebo between the Boxwood Garden and the English Woodland Garden. Kristina, I learned a valuable lesson working here. Never be the first person to walk through the English Woodland Garden on a fall morning.
Because
the spiders build nice little webs over the path. And same is true if you go out hiking. If you were to go out to hike at Shaw Nature Reserve, this is the time of year when they're busy at work building webs right about face height.
just to spite us. Yeah, you have to walk with a stick in front of you. Here's some koi.
I don't know how well it will show up on the camera, but I see spider webs all throughout here, and they're busy at work catching bugs. This one's kind of neat. This particular section is not super great, but this is blue cardinal flower. So the red cardinal flower is more of like an August bloomer, really popular with hummingbirds. And this is the blue variety of it. You can see it's just got those really pretty blue flowers. I actually bought some of this at the spring wildflower sale through Shaw Nature Reserve, and right now in my home garden this is blooming and very pretty.
Yeah, look at that. So we've been talking about some of these signs of autumn, and if you've been here for the full tour, you might have seen us talking about crocus earlier. But crocus, which is this purple flower, I'll get up close, is definitely considered a sign of sort of the end of summer going into autumn. And you can see there is quite a bit of it in this field here.
I was here last week, and I think the amount of crocus in this field has doubled just in the past week.
So we'll be keeping our eye out for more fall color and more signs of fall. But we're gonna go ahead and end here today on this beautiful view of the blooming crocus field. Thank you all for watching, as always. And we'll see you next time.